40 years ago, we opened our doors with one mission in mind.
We'll be right back with the top 10 songs of 1983.
To sell quality American-made vehicles at a fair price.
You have arrived.
And we've loved every minute of the ride. Celebrating 40 years of Two Rivers Ford.
Good morning. How's morale, kids? Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. So good to have you here for the next 3 hours. 615-737-1045. That's the number to react to a weekend full of draft picks. What happened there? Did you hit a button?
I hit a button. We're off to a roaring start.
Oh, it wouldn't be us if we did this cleanly and professionally. What the hell happened? I thought you were pulling a prank on me or something like that.
That would have been better.
Better than just general incompetence. The theme of the show, perhaps the theme of the draft. We're going to talk about these things.
Phone line chaos, the theme of the show.
Oh,
Maybe
God.
It's a good thing.
Oh, they're already starting to ring. Are you scared? You nervous back there?
I'm just looking at it. Looking at that little flashing light.
What the bleep was that, man? 3 days at St. Thomas Sports Park. It's I always forget how much I love being back at the facility for the draft with everybody, because it's just so much fun to sit there with all your friends and colleagues and go line by line in this thing, and then go to the press conferences at the end of each of the 3 days afterwards and ask them questions about the players that they just picked. I'm going to say this on the whole. I largely liked the players that they selected. There was just one day in the middle of the 3 days, quite literally in the middle of the 3 days on Friday night, where not only the selections were questionable, but the explanations afterwards were mind-boggling. And then there's just the trolling element of it. Do we feel like we were actually being trolled by the Titans draft war room? Because it felt a little bit that way.
When they were waving?
When they were waving at us after taking a tight end in the fifth, not having a fourth-round pick, trading up to get Will Levis, drafting a running back with no ACL, selecting a tight end, and ESPN said potentially a fullback, so I don't know if he's like an H-back type deal. Whatever Josh Weil is, taking the fifth-round tight end and then looking at the camera and waving. Smiling bigger than I've ever seen them smile in 7 years covering Mike Vrabel. It was something, man. But here's the thing. All 6 picks are on offense. Yeah, they waited to get the wide receiver until the 7th round, their last selection at 228. Colton Dowell out of UT Martin, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that guy. Because it's him and Chris Moore at the wide receiver position. And that's basically, they're running it back. If a draft class ever embodied who it is that the Tennessee Titans are, it's this one. No? Even as we thought honestly that they might go all 6 picks on offense without taking a wide receiver, because that Ohio State center was still sitting there when they got to 228. We were cracking jokes in the media draft room. They couldn't possibly. Surely they have to do this. And it got to a certain point where we're just rooting for them not to take a wide receiver so we can walk into that press conference at the end of the day. Be like, hey, guys, what the hell? If I was a Titans fan, I would be disgusted. Truly, I would. And it's not because I think the picks are bad or the draft was poor. I really don't think that at all. But it's because of where you have been as an offense, coming off a year where you were just barely squeaking by 17 points a game, where all the stats or all the facts that kept running on the various television broadcasts about your favorite football team was how it's the first time they've missed the playoffs since 2018. They're the only team in the NFL to not score 30 points, which frankly was being nicer to them than they deserve because they never scored 28 once last year, and they only scored 27 just the one time. So if I'm a Titans fan and I know all these things about my football team and I get a new offensive coordinator, I get a general manager who's coming from the San Francisco 49ers, and I feel like, okay, this thing's got a pulse. Give me something to hope for. And then Thursday goes down the way that it does, and you say, okay, that's fine. The guard or the tackle, whatever position Peter Skaronski is going to play, whatever he is, it's the worst position group on the roster. We know they needed help there. If the quarterback thing didn't work out, at least they got a really good player. And then Friday night happens. And the internet feels like it's on fire. And we had heard that they tried to trade back up into the first round. I would have to assume that would be for Levis, right? It didn't even feel like – it felt like they were the only ones who didn't feel like Will Levis was about to fall out of the first. Because that was the reporting all around them.
And after the Vikings picked in the first, there was no team with a major quarterback need there. So if you're trading back in, you're trying to beat somebody to the punch.
That's right. So they trade up in the second round for Levis because he's their guy, but not at 11, at 33. And they take Tyjae Spears, the running back out of Tulane, who, I made the ACL joke earlier, will go through the litany of knee injuries that he has had. Was a very, very productive player at Tulane. I'm not even mad about the pick. I'm not even mad about the round, even as I thought it was comical that this franchise would take a backup quarterback and a backup running back on day 2 when the wide receivers are still basically all there. And I think at the point that they had taken Tyjae Spears, I think 8 wide receivers had come off the board after they selected Will Levis. So the draft class, to me, it's functional, right? It's them. It's very, very much them. But I think a lot of you expected that they would start to be or behave or draft maybe a little less like they have in years past, and this felt very, very much the type. So a couple of questions were asked of Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. You're going to hear from them. You're going to hear from Will Levis throughout the course of today's show. And the question of whether it's enough, specifically at wide receiver, we'll get to here in just a second. Lucas, you have something?
Yeah, this draft is so covered in irony for the Titans because usually, coming away from the draft, what's the most scrutinized pick? What is the most overreactionary pick, the most public
First round
pick, right?
Yep.
And that is probably the pick that Titans fans have least amount of problems with. You talk about coming away with concern about the offense. All 6 picks were used to address the offense. And who is a better NFL prospect, Will Levis or Malik Willis?
Will Levis.
It is very ironic that the Willis pick, 3rd round pick a year ago, was widely praised by Titans fans. They loved that pick. Are you kidding me? That guy fell to the 3rd round? And the Willis 2nd round pick is being totally trashed, even though he is a better prospect.
Who's it being trashed by?
Unnamed people.
What?
Yeah, unnamed.
Unnamed, you say?
QB1 for me.
Unnamed?
Yeah. It's always been QB1 for me.
You are the worst. And you are, at least I'm honest. All right? At least I tell you what I am. Okay? You.
That's my guy. What are you talking about?
You know we're going to have him on the show at some point. What are you going to do? You know I'm going to hang you out to dry. Like, that's exactly what's going to happen here.
That's my guy.
Do you have that audio? Do you have the audio of you? We had so many moments to use this piece of audio for so many different reasons at various points throughout the weekend. Because ultimately, I got my draft wish, and now I don't know how to feel about it, and Lucas is back there maligning it, like many videos that I saw of Titans fans on the internet, literally throwing furniture while the pick was being made. Go ahead and play it for people.
The thing that I hate the most about Levis is the constant argument of reasons why he did not perform up to par in 2022. Different offensive coordinator, lost his best pass catchers, offensive line, and I know he was dealing with turf toe and injuries here and there, but not once did we see him overcome those things and just pull Kentucky to victory. We saw Anthony Richardson do that last year. We obviously saw Bryce Young do that last year. Bryce Young, by the way, did not have an array of weapons at Alabama last year. Wide receiver was a big problem for Alabama last year.
It was by far and away one of the worst wide receiver groups that I've seen from that university in a couple of seasons.
So I don't like that Will Levis's best tape came when everything around him was just right. That wasn't me.
I like these things. I like doing this. I see why you get so much enjoyment out of running things back that I say erroneously. This is delightful.
That wasn't me. I do stand by that though. That you couldn't find enough instances of him overcoming everything that went against him last year. So it's the Titans' prerogative to make sure that he's put into better positions, obviously, moving forward to maximize those talents. But I can have that opinion and still believe it to be ironic that the general takeaway from Titans fans is so overwhelmingly negative on Levis using a second round pick on him than it was using a third on Malik Willis, who is a far worse pro prospect.
Optics, baby. It's all about optics. And we will get into this. The phone lines are loading up, so there's a few if you want to jump in. 615-737-1045. We'll get into the Titans draft class. We're going to talk about our favorite and least favorite picks of this class. And I want you to listen to a clip from Rand Carthon, not at any point over the draft weekend, okay? But from his introductory press conference when you think about this class. This scenario that Rand Carthon set the table for when he was introduced back in mid-January, I think is something that's going to ring in the ears of Titans fans every time they see Will Levis, every time they hear the name Will Levis. And it's not just about him today, but that is ultimately what this draft class is going to be judged on. Listen to Rand Carthon at his introductory press conference being asked a question about Ryan Tannehill and talking specifically about the quarterback position.
Evaluating the roster, I am. And that's going to take further conversations with me and Mike. Ryan has been great here. He's won a lot of football games, and I look forward to us winning football games, but I still need more time, to evaluate and make those decisions. As you know, this is a quarterback-driven league, and people are hired and fired every day over that position. So I want to spend more time evaluating that position, so I'll have my own opinion, and Mike and I will confer and figure it out.
People are hired and fired every day over that position. Well, they've just tied themselves to Will Levis at that position as the most concrete thing we know about the quarterback future for the Tennessee Titans. And the clock on those hirings and, more importantly, firings, that started as soon as they took him on Friday night. 615-737-1045. You're going to hear from Vrabel, Carthon, Levis himself. Let's talk about the favorite selections from this Titans draft class and the least favorite ones that we saw them take. Your phone calls as well. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show, 615-737-1045. I don't know what was being shaken on Friday night when the Titans traded up for Will Levis, took a third-round running back, Tyjae Spears. The draft class in its entirety, 6 picks, all on offense. 2 offensive linemen, quarterback, running back, tight end, and at 228, the 6'3", 212-pound wide receiver, Colton Dowell, out of Tennessee Martin. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what you are heading into battle in the AFC South with. Now, we know that the roster's not done yet. Mike Vrabel was very quick to remind us. In fact, do we have Mike's response when we asked him whether what they did in free agency in the draft was good enough at wide receiver?
Going into Monday, it will be. Yeah, and we're going to continue to explore and find ways to improve our roster and make it as competitive as possible. So on Monday, it will be. We felt good if, for us to add a receiver, we would have come far off our board at those certain levels, and that's what I'm happy about. You guys are going to trust us. We're going to put players in here that are going to help us win.
That last part kind of goes back to the previous question. You're going to find ways to improve your roster. Free agency's over and the draft's over. Aren't those the places to improve your
free
roster?
agency's not. They're going to let us sign free agents Monday. They will. Chad will. Rand will. They'll let us sign free agents on Monday. Free agency is going to go all the way up until the season starts. There'll be players that are on other teams that will become available Monday. Take a look. It'll be real large waiver wire. We'll scour that. We'll continue to look for trade possibilities and opportunities. Chad and Vin will help us with the salary cap, find ways to open up salaries so that we can potentially sign other players. There's been a pretty good process here, and I'm excited about it.
The last part, and I'm excited about it. Yeah, you are, big guy. I mean, the waiver thing, I do take him at his word that they're going to continue to add players, but are they going to be substantially better than what you've got on the roster? Now, the bar is very low for what you currently have on the roster, and the 7th-round pick and the journeyman former 4th-rounder, largely career special teamer and guy who started 7 games and had a decent season for the Texans. It's got to be better than that, right? Because that was the question that I kept getting after the fact is, they've got to have a plan. Surely this isn't the plan. They've got to have a plan. And I think that's why people were so angsty. We'll see what the plan bears out. And the waiver wire, that is something that's going to happen. You're going to see teams start to shed more salary as we get closer. And what the Titans end up doing now that we're through the draft is going to be fascinating. But, yeah, at this point, pretty interesting process.
Is the wide receiver core right now better or worse than it was at the moment that Mike Vrabel said to Ed Werder in Kansas City, who the bleep are we going to throw it to?
It's better because I don't have to look at Chris Conley anymore.
Chris Conley gone, Robert Woods gone, C.J. Board gone, Chris Moore in.
Hey, man, we were talking about this over the weekend at the facility. There was a game after Treylon Burks got concussed in the first quarter against the Eagles where they had 3 active wide receivers on the roster, and one of them was C.J. Board. So it's better. It's better because more bodies exist. But I think that...
and Chris Moore had a more productive year than every receiver not named Treylon Burks last season.
Right, and did it in 7 games instead of Robert Woods' 17 games. To the phones. This ought to be fun. 615-737-1045. How about Rick in Hendersonville? Hey, buddy.
Hey, Buck. I wanted to be the first one to congratulate you on the acquisition of Will Levis.
Thank you. It's a great day for the show.
Everything you wanted. And now, though, you're trying to throw Lucas under the bus, talking about, what he said about Will Levis. I never heard anyone talk as bad about him as you did. God, I hope he goes to Indianapolis. Now, that was probably a month or 2 ago, but my dad, 92 years old, he's been watching football ever since he worked at Soldiers Field as a kid cleaning up after ball games. He says they moved up for Levis. He stinks. I'll let you go, but wanted to say congratulations.
Thanks, Rick. 92. And Dad is out here saying, I mean, that was my reaction. I almost dropped my phone, Lucas. I couldn't tweet fast enough. Oh, my God, they traded up. Not only did they draft him, they gave up something to go get him.
So no draft capital for this year, right? They basically swapped picks
thirds.
And then gave him the third for next year.
Right. But, I mean, have you looked for a team that's trying to reboot this thing or whatever R word, you looked at the draft capital for 2024? It's not great, Bob. It's pretty bare, in fact, moving forward, other than a couple of sevenths and, the absence of that third rounder. We'll have time this week to talk about it, but it is a curious proposition. Now, we're going to talk about, because I did ask for an explanation outside of the press conference setting about the justification for drafting Will Levis. We're going to get into that more at 11 o'clock. But let's talk about our favorite draft pick from this class, and then we'll do the least favorite draft pick from this class. So, as I mentioned, the 6 players: Peter Skaronski, offensive lineman from Northwestern; Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky, who they traded up to get; Tyjae Spears, running back, Tulane; Josh. Now, there is some controversy, although I'm inclined to side with Rhett Bryan of Titans Radio. Josh Wiley is how Rhett is saying the last name of the tight end, so that is how I will say it until somebody corrects me or tells me otherwise. So Josh Wiley, tight end, Cincinnati; Jalen Duncan, tackle out of Maryland; and then Colton Dowell, the 7th-round wide receiver. Of those 6 picks, all on offense, Lucas, which did you like the most?
Spears.
Did you?
And I get the concern about the knee and what was the Ian Rappaport report.
I'm going to pull up the full litany of issues that he has had with his knees, just so I can be specific.
But that's a guy that you learned about in the draft process. You really got to know around Senior Bowl. Had a really nice Senior Bowl in Mobile. But if you'd been watching college football last season, you definitely knew who Tyjae Spears was. He averaged 195 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing per game in his last 3 games as a college player. He could not have finished his career stronger, and his best game came against USC. Now, it is USC in a big-time program, Power 5, Cotton Bowl. Obviously, we've said what we've said about the USC defense. It was awful that game, but it was awful because of Tyjae Spears. He was unbelievable in that Cotton Bowl with well over 200 yards rushing. But just a change of direction guy that I feel like fits exactly what the Titans have been looking for to complement Henry, really ever since Derrick Henry became Derrick Henry in 2018. They couldn't find it in Darrington Evans. Swing and a miss there. And do you have the injuries pulled up from Rappaport?
Yes, I do, as soon as a pop-up hits me in the head. Okay, so Ian Rappaport, after they took him, all right? And now this information wasn't disclosed until after they had taken him, at least on the NFL Network. I hadn't seen it reported anywhere else to this extent.
No, It was convenient that Rappaport put this out only after he was selected.
It happened very, very quickly. So Ian Rappaport gets on there and says that Tyjae Spears suffered 2 torn ACLs in his past, not last year. Obviously, he was incredibly productive last year.
Yeah, played it pretty much every game.
Mentioned his statistics. In fact, more games in any season by far last year. So 2 torn ACLs in his background, in addition to a full thickness cartilage loss and no ACL in his knee. Additionally, Spears has arthritis. Rappaport said it's unclear how long he will be able to play in the NFL, and even openly wondered if Spears could be a one-contract guy. That's pretty damning.
Can't tear an ACL if you don't have one.
Third-round pick. Wide receivers on the board.
Yeah.
The running back has arthritis? That's your favorite pick?
I love Tyjae Spears from a skill set perspective.
Sure.
And I understand why it is difficult with this team's recent injury history to blanket trust this team's evaluation of medicals when it comes to the draft. But they just have more information than we do. They just do. And if they're going to spend a 3rd-round pick on this guy, they're going to have done their due diligence. I understand where the concerns are, but I just loved watching Tyjae Spears run for Tulane last year. And even if you get a great 4 years out of him and he's a one-contract guy.
Are you getting 4 years out of a dude that doesn't have cartilage or ACLs, allegedly?
Can't tear an ACL if you don't have one.
Stop that. We were sitting in the. I can't. That is a confidence that I'm not willing to betray. That's probably a joke that was gone too far in the Titans media draft room when he was drafted. But all right. So if the running back with a full thickness, I don't even know what full thickness cartilage is. It sounds terrible.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, we don't know what any of these words mean, right? We just point to it and say, look at that. Full thickness cartilage, that's terrible. I don't know what that means.
Bleep you. I know what arthritis means. It means bone on bone, and he's a running back. You're talking about if he has a great 4 years for the Titans, can he give me another season like last year with arthritis? That is my general concern with the running back. All right. But I do like him as a player. Like, I like, you're right, Tulane, he's electric. When he's healthy and he's on the field, he's electric. The question is, oh my God, are we going to do the durability thing again with the backup running back behind Derrick Henry? Maybe they're hoping he doesn't have to have a lot of volume because Derrick's here, and then eventually, they can get a good season or two out of him.
This team is obviously sensitive to the durability issue, and they are aware how injuries have derailed them over the last 2 years. It's the reason they moved on from David Long. So you just have to fall back on them having more information than you and still believing that it's worth the pick given the kid's talents. I don't know what most of those words mean, what Ian Rappaport put out there. They have people that do. So while it is concerning, and it's totally fair to be terrified, I'm going to fall back on whoever has more information and just look at the guy from a tape and production perspective, which from that perspective, it is very, very good.
All right, I'm not going to WebMD this thing, but I'm looking at the Rosenberg-Cooley-Metcalf Clinic of what a full thickness cartilage loss is. Are you ready? Urban Dictionary didn't have it, so we had to go to the medical. We had to go to the medical dictionaries. All right. Cartilage cracking, fragmentation, and erosion over time that has resulted in full thickness loss of your weight-bearing cartilage. Articular cartilage is weight-bearing cartilage, often altering the alignment of your lower extremity towards bowing. This condition is osteoarthritic in nature. Those are a lot of big words, but you get the point. It's a loss of his weight-bearing cartilage. I would feel like that's not a great thing for a running back.
Look, we have WebMD.
No, it's not WebMD. It's the Rosenberg-Cooley-Metcalf Clinic.
We have those things you just said. They have a room full of people whose job it is to decide these things. If in hindsight we look back 2 to 3 years and it goes exactly down that path that Titans fans are terrified it will go down, it will have been an inexcusable pick, especially given the last 2 years of injury history. But if not, they could have gotten a real running back talent out of it and the perfect complement to Derrick Henry. Now, the interesting thing is, how much longer is Derrick Henry on this roster?
Yeah.
And how much longer can you talk about him being a complement to Derrick Henry? The guy can run between the tackles. He's a 3-down back. I just like the pick from a talent, tape, and production standpoint. Not smart enough to look at the rest.
Stephanie is calling us from Nolensville up next. Hey, Stephanie.
First-time caller. I love your show. I listen to it almost every day.
Well, that's very kind, Stephanie. We're happy to have you.
Okay. I just wanted to comment on the ACL situation. I don't think you can have a knee without an ACL and be able to walk. So I would count on the doctors for the Titans clearing him before I would jump to, he basically doesn't have a knee. So don't worry. It's all going to be okay.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. That was very soothing.
Wait, I need to pull that as a drop. Just Stephanie's sweet voice telling, don't worry. It's all going to be okay.
She's much more soothing than Sue-Ann.
and either of us.
Sue-Ann just come in here and drop the hammer on somebody. Today feels like a Sue-Ann day. I've got a gut feeling. I don't know at any point in the next 3 hours that we're going to hear from her, but she was active on social media. I saw her in the mentions this week, and I feel like today is a Sue-Ann day.
I was talking to Sue-Ann over the weekend.
You guys are you texting buddies?
No, she's hitting me up. She's asking me questions, so I'd love for her to call in.
Okay.
Derek says, Hines Ward also has no ACL.
I was about to say, there are documented cases of NFL players without ACLs, right? Like it just physically affects the way that they run. I think Hines Ward is an example of that because we were talking about this in the room over the weekend. Now,
hey, you know what wouldn't have happened to Hendon Hooker in that South Carolina game if he didn't have an ACL?
He wouldn't have torn it.
He wouldn't have torn it. Just saying.
He wouldn't have gone to Detroit. 615-737-1045 is the number to react to the Titans draft class. Speaking of which, because I haven't told you my favorite pick from the draft class yet. I'll do that here in just a second. But the live show with Cosell, we are going to break down this entire draft class with you guys at the Hutton Hotel, the Analog in the Hutton Hotel on May the 20th. The tickets are only $25. They are available right now at 1045thezone.com. Greg is flying down from NFL Films headquarters. Like I said, we got some special things planned for you. We're going to have a Q&A session with Greg for you to ask him specifically about these players. There's going to be food, drink. It's going to be a great time. 1045thezone.com for those tickets. I asked for an update, Lucas. They told me we had in total 250 tickets for the venue. Like it's a sellout if it's 250. I feel like, we sold out the bowling thing last year, and I think people are really interested to talk about this draft class, especially given the quarterback decision that they just made. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys on May the 20th at the Hutton Hotel. My favorite pick is probably Skaronski. It just, I think, accomplishes everything that it needed to do with a premium player who was regarded by many as the top offensive lineman in the draft class. He's good in pass protection. He can run block. He's nasty. He's physical. He's mean. He likes contact. He's talking about mano-a-mano kicking somebody's ass, right? He is the guy that they need. He's not quite Lawan in terms of personality, but he's certainly not, just a dull lump of clay the way that some offensive linemen are. This guy is somebody who I think is going to be a foundational piece of their football team for 8 to 10 years, as long as, God willing, health allows. And I think that he was such a fundamental fix for so many of the issues that they have that correct a lot of the problems that faced them offensively last year, both in terms of their passing game and their rushing attack. Skaronski is the favorite by far.
He's the first-round pick with the lowest amount of risk since who?
Lowest amount of risk.
Yes.
Jeff? Well, no.
No, Jeff, there was obviously that was a huge hit, but there was a great deal of risk with Jeff.
Yeah, I guess I'm not remembering because it wasn't necessarily just about the ACL. People weren't caught up about the ACL. It became a whole different thing around Jeff that whether it was warranted or not.
It was viewed as a risk, and obviously it paid off big time for the Titans.
For the Titans.
You got to go back a while.
Who was 18? 18 was Rashawn. Rashawn wasn't necessarily a risk, but he didn't pan out. He was just recently playing inside linebacker at the time.
Yeah.
Before that, 17, was that Corey and Adoree Jackson?
Yes, Corey was 17.
I think Corey and Adoree in the first round.
Yeah.
I don't think Adoree was risky. Corey was risky just because of how high you took him, 5th overall. He may end up back here, by the way, depending on how the waiver wire comes down. It's been a while since they've had just Conklin.
Yeah, that's what the YouTube chat is saying, Jack Conklin.
Conklin was a fundamentally sound, high-ceiling player. He's all-pro his first year, even if they had a lot of help for him. Like
high floor, high ceiling.
He was a fundamentally sound piece that accomplished what they needed to until, of course, he tore his knee.
That feels like what the Skaronski pick is.
So that was the 17 draft, yeah?
No, Conklin 16. Yeah.
16, because they had the first overall pick and they dealt it. Okay. Your phone call, 615-737-1045. We'll talk about our least favorite selections from the Titans draft class coming up next. do some phone calls, shall we? How we feeling, kids? Titans 2023 draft class in place. 615-737-1045. Tell you who my least favorite selection of their class was momentarily. First, let's go to Mahogany. Been waiting patiently. What's happening?
Hey, what's going on, bud? Long time no speak. I've been getting away because, I'm trying to figure out fatherhood now. I've got a 5-week-old at home, so.
Congrats.
But, thank you. But my goal was for her to grow up a Titans fan. After this draft class, I might just let her be a Pats fan like my wife is. Because mainly, one pick, and that is, Steve was mayonnaise and coffee. Mayo boy for short. We saw the tape last year. Yes, he's got the strong arm. Yes, he can do.
Hey, Mahogany, your phone line is awful, but I get the summary, and I'm sorry that it was so traumatic for you that the Titans selected Will Levis that you're thinking about considering another team for your daughter's fandom. It's Will Levis, right? The least favorite pick.
I think universally, if you poll Titans fans, that's what it's going to be.
It's not just because it's him. Let me say that. All right. It's because they gave up future assets to get him. Now, they didn't trade up the worst case scenario, right? We talked about this, what was it, Thursday leading up, that they traded up in the first round to get him. Now, that didn't happen. They did try to trade back into the first round. Whether that was specifically for him or not, we will never know, and they're not going to tell us. But they did trade up to get him with the second pick of the second round. Giving up assets for a quarterback who's not good enough to be your selection at 11 concerns me. He may pan out. He may go on to have a very successful NFL career. He may be as good as the other two who were taken in this draft class, who, by the way, are also going to play in his division. Richardson and Stroud are a Colt and a Texan, respectively. So the whole AFC South's had a quarterback remake in the last 3 years. But for me, it's Levis just because it costs something. If they'd have got him at, 41, I think was the original selection. If they got him at 41, okay, fine, flyer. I'd have felt the same way I did last year when they took Malik, when they traded up to get Malik, but it was in the third round at that point. So I think the Levis situation is fascinating. He's going to be heavily scrutinized. And it, even more so because of the part of the country that he just landed in that is intimately familiar with his career at Kentucky. Let's go to Spencer in Nashville next. Hey, Spencer.
Hey, guys. Thanks. Wanted to get my perspective on Will Levis, being very familiar with his game I'm a Titans fan and I'm a Kentucky fan. And, I certainly understand, there's always a little bit of a gamble with any quarterback prospect. And there are certain things he definitely has to work on. But I do think he elevated the team around him, as maybe some don't believe. In his first year as a starter at Kentucky, won 10 games. You can go back and look how many times that's happened at Kentucky. Not many. Only one in my lifetime other than his first year there. Second year was very rough, but he did win 7 of the 11 games he started. I'm of the belief that Kentucky probably only wins 4 or 5 games without him, because they had the SEC equivalent of Todd Downing at offensive coordinator, and Rich Scangarello, and no offensive line. He just didn't have any help. But like I said, I hoping for the best with him. I understand where there's maybe some questions, but I think there's more there than maybe what people are giving him credit for. Thanks.
Thanks for the call. Just beat the music. We appreciate it. You're going to hear from Will Levis on his accuracy and decision-making questions. We're also going to hear from Mike Vrabel later on about these issues that people have with the pick and with the evaluation of the player as a whole. Because he got caught up in the draft process, right? It had been leaked to McShay, it felt like. and others at that level, Todd McShay of ESPN, it had been leaked to McShay for, it felt like, weeks, that if Levis was at 4, that was the Colts pick. It was almost like a Trey Lance, Mac Jones, San Francisco scenario, where a lot of people were talking about how much San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan specifically liked Mac Jones, that he fit a certain mold of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan has had success with before, and people were thinking, surely not. Surely they would take one of the other prospects before Mac Jones came off the board. You have so much more potential with the other ones. And so ultimately, San Francisco in that draft took Trey Lance, and the Colts in this past draft took Anthony Richardson and had a bit of a smokescreen of their own. So it wasn't the Texans just gaslighting people. Indy was doing a fair amount of gaslighting themselves, and then Chris Ballard had a clip at a press conference saying he didn't like what people did to kids in the draft process, leaking stuff out there to try and, help or hurt their draft stock. But Levis is fascinating. I mean, really fascinating, especially in a landing spot like this one. So we're going to talk about, me getting my wish. I wanted the Titans to draft Will Levis for selfish purposes only. They didn't just do that. They traded up to get him. So you're going to hear from Mike Vrabel. You're going to hear from Will Levis on his Zoom call after he was drafted with all the Titans media there in attendance and the questions that we asked him about some of the questions around his game. We'll get to more of your phone calls as well. Second hour coming up next here on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 10:59. Good morning from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. The 2023 NFL Draft is over. The Titans went in with 6 picks and came out with 6 players. The draft haul includes guard Peter Skaronski, quarterback Will Levis, Tulane running back Tyjae Spears, Cincinnati tight end Josh Wiley, Maryland offensive tackle Jalen Duncan, and wide receiver Colton Dow out of Tennessee Martin. Levis, the headliner, Titans general manager Rand Carthon was on Ramon, Kayla, and Will this morning talking about the former Kentucky quarterback's strengths.
Well, Will is a, big, strong guy, has a strong arm. He's run NFL offenses, whether it was under Liam Cohen or Rich Gangarello. They ran NFL-style offenses. So from a comprehension standpoint, he understands NFL concepts, and he's executed NFL concepts.
An historic upset Sunday in the NHL. The Boston Bruins, coming off a President's Trophy in the best regular season in NHL history, fell in Game 7 overtime to the Florida Panthers 4-3 in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. College baseball, Tennessee and Vandy both got the sweep over the weekend. The Vols over Mississippi State, Vanderbilt over Kentucky. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour underway on this Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Draft class in place for the Tennessee Titans, and we are talking about it all day long. Jump in if you want to. 615-737-1045. Or get back to the phones here in just a minute. But we got to talk about this Will Levis pick and how the Titans are justifying it, not just to, fans, but to media and everybody else who is curious about their selection, their trade up for the Kentucky quarterback. So the fall from grace, or the fall from the first round, in any case, was very public. Those things are very humiliating when it happens every year, and it also turns it into, unfortunately, for better or worse, right, wrong, or indifferent, it turns it into must-watch television, right? How many of us were locked on to the fall of Will Levis in the first round? Came in and talked about it a great deal during Friday's show, and then the discussion became, well, now he's not even going to attend. Where will he end up going if he's not going in the first round? What else is wrong with him? Look at his agent leaking the stuff about the injury being a bigger concern now that he's dropped out of the first. And all these different things around Will Levis. And I told you guys why I wanted him. I told you it's the best possible thing for the radio show. I don't know if it's the best possible thing for your football team, but it would be a pick that everybody has an opinion about. So now Will Levis is a Tennessee Titan. They trade up from 41 to 33 with the Arizona Cardinals to get him. They swap third-round picks this draft and lose, or send, rather, their third-round pick in 2024 to Arizona, who is just stacking the deck. Monty is for next year's draft. They are loaded with draft capital in 2024, are the Cardinals. They were maneuvering all over the place in this one. So Levis is the thing that kind of sets everybody off, right? Even if you like the rest of the draft class, Levis is the thing. You got Vols fans who are outraged that how dare the local professional football team, a football team in the state of Tennessee, take the Kentucky quarterback over Hendon Hooker, who ended up falling out of the second round. Hell, all the Vols did. All of them but Darnell Wright. We'll talk about them probably later in the week. So you got Vols fan base who aren't really down with the Titans. They're outraged because how dare you take Levis over Hooker? You got people who are just generally watching football outraged. How dare you take Will Levis over anybody, or particularly a wide receiver? Then there's, the agents of chaos in this particular moment, such as myself, who are saying, oh, my God, not only did they get him, but they traded up to get him. They're putting their jobs on the line with this one. Malik was a luxury. And maybe Levis in the second is something closer to that than a solution at franchise quarterback, even though it's substantial capital. Now, I want you to hear from Rand Carthon about the justification of drafting Will Levis. And in this scenario, what they have at this point around Will Levis, I'm sorry, not Rand Carthon, Mike Vrabel. That's my bad, Lucas. I saw you looking for the clip. I want you to hear from Mike Vrabel about how they feel they can support Will Levis and the difference between his tape in 21 versus 22.
To help him improve, and we think that he will improve.
I mean, I think, Gentry, we can obviously be transparent. Kentucky was a much different football team in 2021 than what they were in 2022. So if we protect him when he's out there at whatever point, if we don't protect him better than what it was, it's probably going to look the same, just like it is for every quarterback. So we try to look at the really good exposures, the great performances. We try to look at them, what they look like at their worst, and then just try to get, pull the curtain and see what it looks like. But there was some really impressive performances against some big-time defenses in the SEC. Now, there's some decisions that have to be better. We can't put the ball in harm's way, no matter who our quarterback is.
So Lucas went through and charted Will Levis's performance against some of these teams that would bring these things into question. Lucas, what do you have? What kind of information do you have at your disposal?
I went through to his game log from 2021 and 2022, trying to sort through the performances against the best defenses Kentucky played that year, like Mike Vrabel just referenced. If you go back to 2021, obviously Kentucky's in the East. They play Georgia every season. Georgia's had the number one ranked defense in college football the last couple of years. So in 2021 against Georgia, Will Levis, 32 of 42, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a QBR of 86, and 10 rushes for 12 yards. He took 3 sacks in that game. Other than that, 2021, which is the crown jewel season of Will Levis's college career, they did not really face an upper-tier defense in the Southeastern Conference. Kentucky did not play Alabama in 2021. They played LSU, but a much different version of LSU that led to Ed Orgeron being fired rather than the one under Brian Kelly this past year. They did not play LSU this past year. So the best defense they played by far and away was Georgia in 2021, and Iowa in the bowl game, who, as we saw over the weekend, continues to just churn out draft picks.
Always tight ends. There's so many Iowa tight ends.
Who had the stat? 12. This obviously has nothing to do with Iowa's defense, but it's just incredible. 12 tight ends taken out of Iowa in the NFL draft since 2000. It's a stunning statistic.
Yeah.
But anyway, Will Levis against Iowa in 2021, 17 of 28, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, took 6 sacks in the bowl game victory over the Hawkeyes. 20-17 was the final. I did include his performance against Tennessee in 2021 just because it was fantastic. Tennessee's defense was nothing to write home about. Yeah, in 2021. It really wasn't. But Levis, in that game in Lexington, a shootout that game, was 31 of 49, 372 yards, 3 touchdowns with 1 pick, a pick 6 by Alontae Taylor. And he had a QBR of 72.5, rushed 15 times for 47 yards, 2 touchdowns. He took 3 sacks in that game. I shouldn't say he only took, but a real threat with his legs in that game. He was destroying Tennessee on 3rd down, running the ball in that game. But obviously the flip side of that is 2022, which for Tennessee's defense was basically their crown jewel performance of that season. What they did to Levis in that Kentucky offense, going 16 of 27, 98 yards, 3 picks, 4 sacks, a QBR of 13.4 in a 44-6 loss at Neyland Stadium. Other than that, against Georgia, 20 of 31, 206, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, took a sack. And against Missouri last year, who had a top half defense in the SEC, he did take 6 sacks, but was 13 of 19 for 170 yards, 3 scores, no picks.
So Albert Breer had a nugget on the Titans vetting process with Will Levis. They had the Kentucky quarterback put together cut-ups of his worst turnovers and bring them on his 30 visit. Once he got there, and I'm reading from SI.com, Breer's column that went out before day 3. Once he got there, they asked him to talk them through the thought process and decision-making on the negative plays. They wanted to see if he could articulate it, because as they saw it, that would show if he could correct it. He did well there. He hit it off with Mike Vrabel, and now he's a Titan. So they feel that if he can articulate the mistakes that he made, that it's coachable. That with all the other high ceiling, and he is a high ceiling player. Because I texted somebody on Friday night. This was about 7:30. So what was that? Maybe an hour after they had picked Levis. Is that right?
Yeah, because they picked Levis right at the top of the second round.
Right.
So that everything started at 6.
I texted somebody, biggest reason I shouldn't hate a trade up for Will Levis. And the response was, didn't really give up much for a high ceiling player at a premium position. Those were the biggest justifications for the Titans and Will Levis. That he passed their vetting test, that they had good interactions with him. It was reported by Mike Giardi, formerly of the NFL Network, that Levis and the Titans had one of the better visits among other teams who had not really enjoyed or not really had a favorable experience with Will Levis, as was reported. And then the compensation side of things, didn't really give up much for a high-ceiling player at a premium position. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I'm not saying it's a good pick. It's my least favorite pick of the draft class. But their justifications are there, and now the burden is on them to make sure that this guy doesn't flame out. Now, we asked Will Levis about this in his Zoom call with us on, what would that have been, Friday night, probably right about the time that, right about 7:30. So Will Levis was on a Zoom call with us. He was asked about his decision-making and accuracy being in question. This was the new Titans quarterback.
Confident in it. I definitely have room to improve, but accuracy and decision-making, I feel like, are a couple of my strengths. And especially at this next level, I know that they have to be taken to the next level if I want to be successful. So again, just looking forward to learning from the staff and the other players to just develop me to be the best quarterback that I can be.
Accuracy and decision-making, he's confident in it. He considers it to be a strength at the next level. When the scouting report on him indicates that it is among his weaknesses as a prospect. I don't know what else we expected him to say in that moment, but obviously the answer was panned, and Titans fans who are SEC football fans, whether it's Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky, or otherwise, are going to be suspect of him until such time as they see meaningful growth. Again, if you're looking at it from a roster-building standpoint, it does afford him the opportunity to develop those tools. The thing that you would present, though, as the devil's advocate argument against that, though, is he's also working in a division now against Richardson and Stroud, and the optics of that are going to be tough. He can have a successful career and might not be the best quarterback of the four that now exist in this division. It's a really, really difficult spot to be in. And for Rain Carthen and Mike Vrabel, we talked about this. This puts a ton of pressure on them to get everything else right. Because if you're going to cite to me what Lucas said earlier was the worst thing about Levis, the fact that the continued excuses for lack of production were made because of the surroundings, and then present to me a situation where the roster is deficient and say the exact same thing, well, we think if we put the right things around him, we can get closer to 2021 than he was to 2022. To which the obvious follow-up is, well, what on earth makes you think you have a better that makes you think you're closer to 2021 Kentucky than you are to 2022 Kentucky as a roster in the NFL? 615-737-1045. Let's see. What are you laughing about?
Sorry, it's.
Did you mean to have your mic off? Did you just?
I did not mean to have.
That was the most honest reaction I think I've ever gotten from you.
I chuckled at the thought of how can the Titans become 2021 Kentucky football? I just never thought we'd get to that point. You know? I understand where the reasoning is that you got to put Levis in a good position to succeed because that's where his best football was played, but I just love that. The goal for the Titans, 2021 Kentucky.
Get excited, folks. Season tickets on sale now. Joe calling us from New Jersey up next. Hey, Joe. Hey.
Hey, Buck. Long-time caller. First-time caller, long-time listener. Thanks for having me.
Nice.
My question really is just that, the pick for Levis. I'm trying to justify, like the rest of us, watch the tape, get over all the coffee and the mayonnaise and the eating of the bananas. But from a pure business perspective, what does it say that the Titans either didn't come up in the first to get a 5th-round option on him? If we paid a third, why didn't we pay a second just to come up 2-3 more spots? Or if they rolled the dice, in the middle of a rebuild on a quarterback. I just, like you said, I think it puts a lot of pressure on Rand and Vrabel. Maybe, kind of force their hand. I don't know. Amy said, I need a quarterback, but I'm with you on this being the worst pick of the draft.
It's the way a lot of people are going to feel about him. Even if he comes in at some point and has success, people are going to be suspect of him. And we talked about how much geography matters for quarterbacks in particular, for NFL players and their success. Geography is going to play a big role in how this dude's NFL career is about to play out. I'm not even talking just from the team building standpoint. Coming back or continuing to exist in SEC country where the entire SEC looked around and said, really, that guy? We'll get back into Levis. We'll talk about the AFC South quarterback situation because it is now gone through. You want to talk about remodeling things? The whole quarterback situation in this division just got a remodel. We'll take more of your phone calls coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Draft in the books. Rookie minicamp right around the corner. I think Mike Vrabel said the first day that the rest of the rookie class, Skaronski, has already been to Nashville, done his press conference, taken some pictures. Vibes are high. Rest of the group, the 5 players that they chose on offense and the undrafted guys that they added, some receivers among that group, will, I believe, be here for their first day on Thursday before rookie minicamp gets underway the following week. So Will Levis, of course, is the most controversial selection from this class. And the way that he fell, I think, surprised even his most adamant doubters, right? Like we played the clip, and, in jest a little bit, of Lucas earlier to start the show last week talking about why he wasn't interested in Will Levis for the Titans. By now, many of you on social media have seen videos going around of, people's reactions, Titans fans' reactions to the selection of Will Levis. And that's why I said geography is going to be as big a part of this dude's career and story as any other prospect that I can remember that they've taken in quite some time. But we talked to you about the vetting process that they had and why it is that they did jockey to try and get back up into the first round to get him. Now, that was the first question that we had for Will Levis. I asked him what that experience was like to drop and ultimately end up with the Titans, and this was Will Levis on falling out of the first round.
Yeah, last night was tough, but I just, stayed positive, and I knew that what was meant to be was going to happen. And then when I saw that they traded up for me, that alone was telling that, they wanted me, they wanted this to happen. So, just really, really excited and thankful for the opportunity.
So that's Will Levis on Friday night with us via Zoom. And the slide that he had, like I said, to see both him and Hooker go way later than anybody had projected them. Levis with the second pick of the second round and Hooker not until the third round to Detroit. The NFL, and we'll spend some time on this. I'd be fascinated. I'm not sure who to get on to talk about this. I'm going to see if Mina Kimes is available to kind of discuss what it is that the biggest questions of NFL evaluators was about the Tennessee offense, because all 4 of them, after Darnell Wright, dropped out of the second round. But for Levis, he lands in Tennessee. They try and trade up on day 1 to get him. He slides to day 2. They trade up to get him anyway, because apparently he was good enough to be their guy later after they added Skaronski. Let's go to Joshua in Florida is up next. Hey, Joshua.
Hey, Buck. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, I just I don't understand why people are kind of complaining about Will Levis. Like, I get it that you may not want him over him and Hooker. I live down here in Florida, so I don't have the affiliation with Tennessee, the college program. But to me, it seems like he fits our offense the best. Like, he ran a similar scheme in college. They talk about his decision-making. Yeah, he threw a lot of picks, but Anthony Richardson had like a 59% completion rating. You know what I mean? And it's like people praise that pick for the Colts. But to me, I think Will's the better prospect. That's just my opinion, but I'll take your comments off there. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Well, the NFL just told you that he's not a better prospect. The NFL just told you flatly that he's nowhere close to as good a prospect as Anthony Richardson. Now, you could argue that maybe Richardson, if he doesn't go 4, where does he ultimately end up landing? Seattle went corner at 5 and receiver at 20. I really, really like the Seahawks draft, if I'm being completely honest with you, for what it is that team specifically need and what already exists on their roster. But we'll probably talk about that tomorrow, other teams in the NFL whose drafts we like or didn't like. But it's unfortunate for him. And, I say this as somebody who was joking around about this is what's best for the radio show. It's controversial. It's, fireworks. It's going to be insane if Will Levis lands here. And sure enough, he does. I do think it's unfortunate that he's getting as much heat as he is right out of the gates. But these are all fair questions to ask. And by the way, he has spent a considerable amount of time answering them. The next opportunity he will have to do so in a meaningful way is as soon as he hits the practice field come rookie minicamp time.
So the biggest strength of Levis's would be how far ahead he is from other prospects from a schematic standpoint, right? Processing an NFL offense, especially with the similarities that the Titans offense carries to Kentucky's under Liam Cohen.
Only Bryce Young has a better level of acumen and exposure to NFL pro-style offenses.
Yeah, so obviously the big arm, the athleticism, the ability to stand in the pocket, all of those things, but where he is from a schematic standpoint is it was a huge feather in his cap leading up to this process, right? What was one of the biggest knocks on Malik going into the draft? Or after we've seen Malik in a sample size starting games in the National Football League? Like, well, it's not athleticism.
Can't operate.
It's not arm strength.
Can't
right?
operate.
It's the ability to process the offense, the Titans offense at full speed. They gave him the opportunity to do so. He showed he couldn't do it at this point in his career, and they went another direction with Josh Dobbs. I wonder how much the Malik Willis experience in 2022 colored the Titans' decision to prioritize Levis, to prioritize a quarterback. And this comes into the discussion about Hendon Hooker, who the Titans met with. Even if they loved Hooker, his football character, his traits, all of those things, there's no sample size of his ability to process that type of offense. Levis has that. So do you see that scenario where they say, we can work with the rest, the decision-making, the accuracy, the fact that his baseline from a schematic standpoint is already there? I wonder how much that played a role, especially with what you saw from Malik Willis last season.
Well, and that's the thing, right? He's already had, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but between Penn State and Kentucky, he's had 4 different offensive coordinators in 4 years.
He's about to have his 5th.
And that is going to be commonplace in the NFL. So they must feel, because of staff turnover, not only is he going to be able to operate in a pro-style NFL offense, he's going to have the skill set to be able to adapt and adjust to changes in coaching staff within a pro-style offense. That's a big part of it. Because my worst case scenario was what? When we talked about this on Thursday. If you come out of this draft with a backup quarterback option that is not better than Malik Willis, you have failed. They did exactly that. I'm not saying that I'm completely out on the pick just because I think it's the least favorite among the selections that I had. But they accomplished the goal that at least I personally had for them, which is put yourself in a better position to succeed should, God forbid, something happen to Ryan Tannehill. They have done so immediately, even if he's not ready, even if he's not, even if there are questions, there are far fewer questions about Will Levis than Malik Willis, who many of you were trying to manifest into the future at Titans quarterback. This is a much less heavy lift to envision. And why people aren't necessarily grasping that is interesting to me. Let's go to Ryan in Shelbyville. Did I do it right? It makes me nervous every time. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, guys. How are y'all?
Good, buddy.
Here, I got a poll option for you because I think it'd be worth it. How many of these Titans fans that are upset about the Levis pick are ball fans as well? Because I think if you take the Kentucky thing off, people aren't as mad as they are.
Yeah.
Because, besides being a quarterback, they didn't take a ball at all. We need a wide receiver, and you still have, Hyatt and Tillman that are both sitting there. So I understand why people are pissed, but we got, because I'm a huge Titans fan, we got a guy who was potentially a top 5 draft pick in the 2nd round. I mean, but you're a smart guy. You've been doing this long enough. What is the premium dollar position if you're drafted in the 1st round?
That's the quarterback, buddy. Oh, you shut him down?
Ryan Tannehill's team, we're going to draft a quarterback in the 1st round, pay him premium dollar to sit behind Ryan Tannehill and learn and get better? It was a great pick. I'm all for it. Go Titans. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for the call, Ryan. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the Tennessee volunteer fan outrage, because not only did they not take one of the Vols wide receivers, not only did they not take Hendon Hooker over Will Levis, but Mike Vrabel took a shot at the Tennessee defense on Saturday when he was talking about how well Colton Dow, the UT Martin receiver, did against Tennessee in October of last year. It was pretty funny, and a lot of Vols fans expressing that outrage on social media. But I don't want to spoil the show, it's probably Wednesday, right? I sense that Vols fans and their reaction to Will Levis's selection to Tennessee, I imagine that's going to make an appearance on Wednesday at about 11 o'clock, yeah?
But Vols fans are like, well, UT Martin scored more on Tennessee than Kentucky did.
There is that. Man, I think this is such an interesting landing spot for him, because you remember laughing at Mel Kiper talking about Will Levis in Tennessee?
He loved Levis throughout the entire process.
He did love Levis, but do you remember Mel's justification on why the Titans would take Will Levis?
Was it that he could be Ryan Tannehill?
No, it was that because Tennessee had a roster where there was weapons available to him.
That's right.
And I can't remember the exact phrasing, but essentially Mel Kiper cited Tennessee's weaponry as a reason why not just a quarterback, but Will Levis in particular made sense here. And of course, we all looked around locally and said, what the hell is he talking about? Who? Mel.
Yeah, I believe I alleged that Mel may not know who Nick Westbrook-Akina is. May have never heard the name Nick Westbrook-Akina.
You know, he played so much. He played in 17 games last year. You have to think somebody.
Hey, Deion Sanders didn't know who Kevin Byard was a few years ago, all right? I don't know, man.
I know.
There's only so much inventory you can have in that position.
It's just now, NWI, again, is not guaranteed to make this roster. Maybe it's Colton Dowell over NWI. Maybe it's Chris Moore over NWI. Like NWI, we're assuming just because he played a bunch for this team last year is safe and secure. They are going to make cuts at the wide receiver position, and we'll see what the waiver wire bears out, where other teams are cutting players. Is Arizona going to feel that it is such a untenable situation with DeAndre Hopkins that if they can't trade him, they'll just release him? We don't know that yet. Are the New York Jets, who are creating, cinematic feature films on the internet right now for their in-house version of Hard Knocks, are they going to feel justified in their weaponry to cut Corey Davis and potentially create an opportunity for that reunion here in Tennessee? I wouldn't hate that. Right? Would you not feel better if you had the current wide receiver room that you had, even though Corey's hamstring was an issue? Would you not feel better if you at least had the depth that Corey Davis, a Corey Davis-like figure, not at the price point that he currently plays for, but if you got him off waivers, would you not feel better about something like that existing in the next month or so?
Yeah, like you said, it wouldn't be at the price point that it would have been had you elected to keep Corey when the time came. And does anybody expect him to be a member of the New York Jets this season?
It doesn't seem that way, but until such time as he's not, I'm gonna, I can't say definitively that if the Jets cut Corey Davis, that the Titans will want him back here. I don't know that. They didn't want him badly enough to make him a contract offer at all the first time around, but it's a different management regime here now. Let's go to Maverick in Nashville up next. What's happening, Mav?
Fellas, I wanted to chime in on Will Levis also, obviously, like everybody else. But I know we talk about him running a pro-style offense being the advantage, but I want to dig in deep into what particular part about running a pro-style offense benefits the Titans the most. If anybody watched the On the Clock episode with Will Levis and the Mannings, one of the things he talked about, and one of the things they praised him for 3 different times on that show, on that episode, was his ability to play fake. And the thing that the Titans do more than any other team in the NFL is run play action to King Henry and then chuck the ball down the field. It's the reason why Tannehill was so efficient, and it's the reason why the Titans offense was clicking when it was clicking.
Well, now wait, Maverick, they've gotten away from they are not that kind of play action heavy. In fact, the biggest criticism of them is that they have gone considerably away from play action in the last couple of years, which again, they have a new offensive coordinator, but I want to make sure that we get that point right. They have not been play action heavy very much at all in the last 2 seasons.
In the last 2 seasons, when their offense was considerably down. That's what I'm saying. The other thing that he brings to the table is his ability to complete passes on 3rd down. So we run Henry left, we run Henry right, and we ask our quarterback to pick up long third downs, he is 70% on third down. So when we're talking about all these stats and all the things that we're looking at in terms of Will Levis, I think that's one thing that gets lost is his ability to pick up third down and his ability to turn his back to the defense and ball fake. And that's something that he has over pretty much everybody else in this class outside of maybe Bryce Young. And the other thing is we don't talk a lot about – I mean, we got this guy for a second-round pick. What happens if Anthony Richardson doesn't pan out?
We got 60 seconds on the clock, Maverick. That's how the calls work, just so we can keep it moving. We appreciate it, though. I think that when you consider everything that he just put on the table there about play faking and his completion percentage specifically on Will Levis on third down, I don't have those numbers in front of me to verify. I will say to you though that you remember when we had Malik Willis on the radio show in training camp?
Yes.
Do you remember what his response was when I asked him, hey, what's the thing that you're doing in practice right now that you're trying to get used to most? You remember what he said?
Footwork?
Operating the huddle.
Because he didn't have to in college.
Didn't have to, right? Think about that. Hey, buddy, what's the biggest thing that you're working through at practice right now? Is it this certain concept? Is it this certain, I don't know necessarily I don't want to get into technical stuff and speak out of turn, but like, what is it that's giving you the most problem? And the response is not the most problems, but what are you working on the most right now? And he said, operating the huddle. Think about how far down the list of things that you expect a quarterback to be able to just automatically do. That operating a huddle in practice is something that, they're having to spend a considerable amount of time on.
It wasn't just that, right? It's snaps under center. It's rolling left, right? Throwing on the run while rolling to your left. Very base level things.
Staying in the pocket, and rather scrambling, not in the way that he spent his entire career scrambling, right? Turning his back to the defense and rolling out of the back of the pocket. You can do that at Liberty when you're so much better of an athlete than every other player on the field. Not in the NFL when the defensive linemen are on your neck by the time you turn the corner. So all these different things that we're describing, and Malik is a very, very below base level example for Will Levis to have to exceed. They're looking for a player who can be the backup quarterback right away and for them to be able to continue to function. And if he provides future viability as the starter, in the case of Levis, beyond 2023, then that puts them in a good position to be able to max things out around him. And even if he's not the best player out of this draft class, even if he's not the best quarterback out of this class, even if he's not the best quarterback to play in the AFC South out of this class, then at least you'll have a rookie quarterback contract to further fortify around with $140 million in cap space in 2024. More of your phone calls coming up next. Emory Hunt of CBS Sports will talk to us about the Titans' 7th-round pick at wide receiver. I butchered his name. Is it Colton Donnell?
Try again.
It's not Colton Donnell.
Keep trying.
I don't want to keep doing this. If I don't have the answer in front of me, I have to scramble. It is Colton Dowell.
Yeah, Colton Dowell.
Not Donnell.
Donnell. What it?
I think I got dyslexic and I flipped the W upside down. I think that's what happened to me there. It's Colton Dowell. He plays at UT Martin. He's from Lebanon. Emory Hunt knows a great deal about him. He's going to tell us how he can help the Titans offense coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Emory Hunt, CBS Sports Football Game Plan, getting ready to hop on with us right now. Always enjoy catching up with them. I don't think we did it in the pre-draft process, but better to do it so now while we have actual players on the roster. Good to catch up with you, buddy. Appreciate your insights and analysis throughout the pre-draft as always. How we living after? Have you recovered from your draft weekend and draft process hangover yet?
Yeah, man. It's now just making sure, letting these undrafted rookie free agents get finalized before I really have a strong take on a draft class. Because I include those guys too, because that's a real good integral part of a team's draft strategy.
Expand on that for people, Emory, because that is such a football-centric approach. That is the way the coaches and personnel evaluators look at these draft classes, not the instant grades, right, that are thrown up on all kinds of different websites immediately after the 7th round concludes, but the undrafted process and the kind of quality players that you can add once the actual draft itself is over.
Yeah, that to me it serves two purposes from a football standpoint and just from a media content standpoint. Right now, everyone has put out their draft grades, so no one's going to read that because everyone's doing it at the same time. So if I come out afterwards with a full draft grade on the undrafted free agents in addition to the draft class, I'm the only one on the block, so I get all the content, right? And then from a football perspective, we only have 7 rounds. And remember back in the day that the draft used to be 12 rounds. So you're going to have a lot of talent go undrafted. So a lot of teams adjust their strategies based off players they have communicated with starting in round 5 that, hey, we could probably get this guy undrafted free agent-wise. They start working on that process, secure his rights. And now you see them, okay, maybe they didn't draft a playmaker in the 7 rounds or let's say a wide receiver or whatnot. They are able to grab a couple of guys that fell maybe due to medicals or whatever reason. They get them as undrafted free agents and have a significant chance of making a roster. You can look at the Titans' history. There's guys on the roster now that were college free agents last year that are on it 2 deep, or guys that have made the roster and have started games as an undrafted free agent. We talked about Derek Roberson a while back from Sam Houston State. So there's a lot of talent out there. So I always include the undrafted guys as a part of the draft class.
Emory Hunt here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can check him out on CBS Sports HQ. Football Game Plan is one of the most comprehensive pre-draft resources that you need to be checking out at that time of year. So what most of the audience knows of Colton Dowell, the 7th-round wide receiver, because you're right, Emory, they do traffic in undrafted and late-round wide receiver picks around here, which a lot of Titans fans have taken umbrage with over the course of the years, but that, they clearly have a strategy that they like and that they are comfortable with in the talent acquisition process. What most fans know of Colton Dowell is that he played at UT Martin, he balled out against Tennessee this year, and he's local. What more can you tell us about the player that the Titans have just added to their wide receiver room?
They got that information from the scouting report that I put out there when he got drafted because I know about him. I love Colton Dowell. And the cool part is about him, man, is he's a big, tall guy, physical guy, 6'2", about 210. Great off the line of scrimmage. He can, stack and accelerate past the defensive back, can track the ball rather well. He catches the ball with his hands. He doesn't let it get to his body. He does a great job in just consistently working himself open. And, if you want to get really technical on his athleticism, one is he ran 4.4, jumped over 40 inches in his vertical in his pro day. So he's someone that has the ability to get deep down the field. And everyone thought, myself included, they were going to go, especially with the way the draft fell, and they passed on to Jackson Smith and Jigba. And, they wanted to get a receiver. They needed a receiver. But I'm not going to say Colton Dowell is a Jackson Smith and Jigba. But this is someone that has talent and that has a great opportunity to crack that lineup if he is able to come in with the right mindset and do what he did against Tennessee, because he was open all day against the Volunteers.
Well, and I guess that is the biggest question for fans who are looking around and saying, everybody knew we needed a wide receiver, and we waited until the 7th round to get one. This is somebody you expect to be able to provide legitimate competition and make an impact if, as you said, he approaches this with the correct mindset, yes?
If it's all about competition and coaches say every job is open and the best man will play, then yeah, he can come in and compete and do a great job because physically he matches up well. Athletically, he matches up well. It's just about, okay, can he get up to speed right away and compete in what looks to be an open opportunity to really be someone opposite of Traylon Burks. We know how much they love Kyle Phillips. So there's a bunch of opportunity there for him to really have success. They probably could have gone wide receiver in round 2, but we know how that turned out.
What do you make of the Levis selection?
Is he better than Malik Willis? You know, if we're talking about competition and a fair competition, what if he is not? And what if we get out there and Malik Willis has made leaps and, bounds in his growth more so than Levis? Now you sit there with a guy that you drafted last year in round 3, better than the guy you drafted this year in round 2, and now you can only play one quarterback. It's not like it's a different position on offense where you can get multiple guys in. You created an unnecessary situation for yourself because a lot of times, a lot of things you see, you said about Malik Willis, you're saying about Will Levis and talking about and where they have to grow their game and where they have to improve. A lot of the question marks you had are about the same. They're the same question marks, except that Malik Willis can take off and run for 40-something yards on any given carry. Not Levis. Levis can run, but he's not Malik Willis's type athleticism and speed. So I just feel like they just created an unnecessary situation to where it could be a possibility where Willis is a better player than Levis, and now you sit there with a guy that you drafted in the second round that's not better than the guy you were so quickly ready to give up on, whom you didn't really give a fair opportunity to.
At FBall Game Plan is where you can follow Emory Hunt. You can check him out on CBS Sports HQ, Sportsline, and the YouTube channel Football Game Plan, of course, available at the link. You can find it on his Twitter account as well. Emory, always appreciate catching up, my guys. Good to chat with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
That's Emory Hunt with us. That was a point that was brought up in the media room. Are they pulling the carpet too quickly out from under Malik? We can talk about that within the context of Rand Carthon's first draft running the show. We'll take your phone calls on that as well. 615-737-1045. The final hour coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Days 2 and 3 of the Titans 2023 NFL Draft took place Friday and Saturday, of course, headlined by Kentucky quarterback Will Levis, selected as the Titans' second-round pick. Levis spoke with Titans media after the selection and was asked about two of the biggest criticisms against his college tape: decision-making and accuracy.
Confident in it. I definitely have room to improve, but accuracy and decision making, I feel like, are a couple of my strengths. And especially at this next level, I know that they have to be taken to the next level if I want to be successful. So again, just looking forward to learning from the staff and the other players to just develop me to be the best quarterback that I can be.
Among the other Titans picks, of the 6 total they took in the third round, it was Tulane running back Tyjae Spears, also Cincinnati tight end Josh Wiley, and with the 7th round pick, the Titans selected Tennessee Martin wide receiver Colton Dow, a native of the Middle Tennessee area. Major League Baseball, the Atlanta Braves are at the Mets today. That's a first pitch coming up at 12:10. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Monday. It's going quickly because we got a lot to discuss. One more hour to do so with you. 615-737-1045. Bert still out on assignment. Lucas is here with me making the show go. Blaine and Mickey will take over in just a little while, but we're happy to chop it up with you in the time that we have remaining. Rand Carthon's first draft is in the books as Titans general manager. Now, while the draft is not, the draft itself is over. The undrafted process is still ongoing. Waiver wire still out there, so the roster construction not done yet. But how do we feel like Rand Carthon did in his first draft? 6 selections, all on offense. 2 offensive linemen, a quarterback, running back, tight end, and a wide receiver is what comprises the next Tennessee Titans, or the Tennessee Titans of the future, shall we call them. They are not without controversy, and it seemed like the fan base locally reacted much worse to the draft class than everybody else did, paying attention to what the Titans were doing. And on the whole, I said this to start the show, I don't hate their draft class. I don't. I did not think there was a scenario in which a team that had struggled this much on offense could afford to be as casual about the wide receiver position specifically as this one has been. I thought that there might be some renewed, what's the word that I'm looking for? Just some kind of urgency, right? That J-Rob was not fired exclusively because of the A.J. Brown situation, but that it played a big role, that this team labored mightily on offense all year long for a great many reasons, talent being a big part of it. You've got a head coach who's got the quote out there before the Chiefs game to Ed Werder, "Why are you running Derrick Henry so many times? Because who the bleep would I throw it to, Ed?" And still, this team waits until the 7th round to take the wide receiver. Now, the wide receiver may work out great. But Rand Carthon on the whole, how do we feel like he did? I told you I'd describe this draft class as functional. It certainly doesn't, ascribe any sense of urgency to me. I do think that their offensive line depth and competition is as good as it has been in a while. And while we know that that is the worst position group on the whole, wide receiver now takes that place, but we knew that the offensive line needed to be blowed up, and they've done that. They add a tight end, a player that I think is going to be fun in Josh Wiley with Chig. You have Trayvon Wesco as your Jeff Swaim guy. Now, potentially, you can do a little more and have a little bit more dynamic element from your 2 and 3 tight end sets. Certainly not from your wide receivers, it seems. The running back, Tyjae Spears, I think is fun. I not crazy about the health history. He was super productive last year for a really good Tulane team. He's clearly somebody that they valued at a high level to spend a third-round pick on him. And to ask you as a fan base to trust their medical evaluations is not something that I do with any great confidence. But the thing that I think made this draft far more polarizing than it has any business being are two things. It is the quarterback that they drafted, and it is the way that the general manager responded to questions about the picks they made on Friday night. Will Levis is suspect. Will Levis will continue to be suspect until such time as he is proven otherwise. For them to take a running back in the third round with the amount of medical history that he has is concerning. There are questions there that need to be answered. We walked into Friday's post-rounds press conference with Rand and Vrabel with many questions about both their selection of Spears when they did it over positions like wide receiver and tight end, and more specifically trading up for Levis. And in the middle of an answer about Spears, but on the heels of several questions about Levis, Rand Carthon wanted to make sure that he took a moment to kind of explain to us why he thought our questions were slightly too much.
No, he's a three-down runner. You know, he can run between the tackles. He's elusive. He can make guys miss, as well as contribute in the passing game. You know, he catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's a good route runner. Just another, guy that can do it all, for us. And you can put him in the game in any situation, and there'll be some production there. I just want to say something real quick. Today and as yesterday, these kids are living their dreams, right? Having their name called, realizing a dream and being drafted. And I don't want these, interactions between us to always feel like we got to take a negative turn. And, this should be a joyous moment for us to praise these kids. This is a moment these kids are going to see this, and this is a moment for them and their families to rejoice in, because it's only going to happen once, We joked, earlier about, Jim and I joked earlier about me not being drafted, you know what I mean? And that's a moment, in my career I can never get back. Coach was drafted in the third round. That's a moment he'll always remember. So let's keep that in mind, when we're talking about these kids and where they've come from and because a lot of these kids have overcome a lot, to get to this point, So let's keep that in mind in moments like this. There'll be other times to critique what they've done. These kids haven't even stepped on the NFL field yet, So let's keep that in mind. This is a moment for them and their families to have something to be proud of and enjoy this moment.
We tweeted that clip out, and I didn't do it with any opinion or anything like that, but I can tell you how it played in the room. It came off defensive. It came off weak. It came off fundamentally misunderstanding what the purposes of our interactions with Vrabel and Carthon as general manager and head coach are supposed to be. No, that is the time for me to ask you questions about the suspect quarterback and the running back with the health injuries or the health concerns. That is very much the time. They may watch that press conference as Rand brought up the prospects and their parents. That is of zero concern to me. They are going to be the same questions that we asked the players upon their arrival. They were the same questions we asked Levis and Spears in their Zooms. I think he was well-intentioned because it clearly, the idea that he didn't get drafted is something that he comes back to a lot, right? And I've never been close to being in a position like that myself personally, so I cannot speak to the moment of joy that it is to have the hard work pay off, to have all these different things, your dreams come to fruition. You are drafted into the NFL. I'm sure it's a wonderful feeling. And you have plenty of other people to tell you how wonderful that feeling for you is and for them to praise you for what you've just accomplished and what you may go on to accomplish at that point. Do you have the follow-up from Vrabel in the middle of that?
No, because that was not a follow-up from Vrabel. This bite that we're talking about from Vrabel came several questions later.
Several questions later. Okay, well then let me not tie the two together unfairly. Don't worry about it, Lucas. I'll get back to that Vrabel clip in a little bit. I think what Rand was trying to do, I got it. I think that it's a case of, buddy, read the room. You have no idea what this organization's relationship with that wide receiver position is. And the fact that there is later a quote about rolling the dice and playing the board when it comes to that specific position, you may feel confident in it, but you have earned zero benefit of the doubt.
I do have what Vrabel said on.
I understand. I don't
the
need it
9
right
players
now.
being
I thought
selected.
it was. I thought it was a follow up to that question.
No.
Okay. We'll get to that later.
It was in that same vein, just later on in the presser.
Do you want to play it?
For me, it's fairly simple. Put your head down and work, and just, eliminate the distractions. And it's really that simple in my mind when you come in and you're young. It's all about putting in the work and learning as much as possible and take advantage of the resources. Prior to me coming here, Coach has brought in a lot of resources for these guys, both on and off the field, that are going to make them better people, better players. Players not only here but just around the league, you have to just take advantage of those resources, and apply your work ethic to it.
If the NFL draft is the best night of their NFL career, they're not going to have a very good career.
There's a big difference between what Rand Carthon said earlier in that press conference and what Mike Vrabel just said there. Like I said, it's not the end-all be-all for Rand. It was a bad moment after a night where legitimately questions need to be answered. And for us to basically get a verbal finger-wagging from the person who I don't think... I mean, listen, Rand knows the job that he took on. Rand has far more experience in personnel departments than I do in, just covering the NFL. But, the relationship that this fan base has with the wide receiver position is toxic. And you cannot say things like rolling the dice and playing the board and scolding people for asking questions about why you took a quarterback whose decision-making and accuracy is suspect and a running back who has a legitimate litany of knee issues in his past.
But that quote, roll the dice, play the board, if they were playing the board in those moments when A.T. Perry is there and Tyler Scott is there, long list, then clearly they did not think enough of those guys to select them with that pick.
No, I take them at listen, I believe them that they're playing their board.
That was the case a couple years ago.
Are you sure that your board is prioritized correctly if you are waiting to take a wide receiver until the 7th?
I mean, John Robinson's board a couple years ago had Des Fitzpatrick over Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, you guys thought you were stressing about John waiting until the 4th to take a wide receiver and then trading up? This administration just waited until their last pick and then basically said bleep you after they drafted a tight end 2 rounds before. I mean, it was an astounding moment. Like I said, I don't hate their draft class. I think that Rand did a fine job with this in his first overall draft. But I would say to you that moment in particular was not a strong point for Rand Carthon in his very early tenure as general manager here. And it's not just because he was, finger-wagging the media. We are asking those questions on behalf of the fan base that you just drafted for. Fans want to know, too. It's not us taking the negative light on things. It's us trying to provide better context, if anything, for the picks that you just made. Get to your phone calls in just a second. We'll talk about the level of trust that we do have in this Titans administration based on the moves that they've made and what comes next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Draft weekend was a lot of fun, but certainly takes a lot out of you. It was good to be back in the building, good to kind of get that moving forward. We'll soon have OTAs, voluntary, or rather mandatory minicamp, rookie minicamp, all those kind of things on the horizon, schedule release. I saw the NFL is targeting a couple weeks from now, 2 weeks from now, it looked like. That's what Adam Schefter had said. But in the meantime, we're talking about how Ran Carthon handled his first draft as the Titans GM. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. How about JC in Franklin up next? Hey, JC.
No. I've been arguing against myself during the time I was on hold, but I'll say this. Maybe this is a signal about what this organization thinks about wide receivers and other positions. Of course, there are premium positions, quarterback, offensive line, at least on the tackle side, right or left, however you want to look at it. But there are a lot of guys between the height of 6 foot and 6'2" that are 200 pounds that run a sub 4.5 and have something more of a 35-inch vertical. The difference is what's between the ears, and maybe what the Titans say is, hey, whether undrafted or whatnot, why put premium picks on a position where I can grab a guy that might be just as good as a first or second round pick because there's more to choose from. And maybe that's a signal from this organization for the future. Maybe it's just for this draft, but that's kind of how I see it, because maybe you can just get an undrafted rookie receiver that's just as good as a second-round receiver that you don't know of.
Hey.
And maybe that's a signal. I'll hang up.
No, wait, JC, don't hang up. I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Has it worked for them?
That's where I was arguing against myself. No, but maybe they say,
Yeah.
hey, because it hasn't worked for us, whether a Corey Davis or any other third-round Fitzpatrick, maybe they say, hey.
Now, it's not JC's fault. I asked him a follow-up, but it is still 60 seconds on the clock. I feel like I've done him dirty.
Yeah, you kind of cheated him there.
Well, but still, like, if he's going to pose to me that logic, and it seems like he's internally conflicted about that as well, is their strategy to actively devalue, or is the value that they place on the wide receiver position not what it is that the rest of the league clearly values the wide receiver position at?
I don't know. I mean, they drafted Corey Davis 5th overall. They took A.J. Brown in the second round in 2019. Have they done a great job of hitting on all these players?
Taywan
No.
Taylor was a third-rounder.
Right.
Like, they've had picks. They've had day one and day two picks at wide receiver that, whether you can argue, they butchered some of the situations, right? Like A.J. They didn't retain Corey for obvious reasons. I think everybody was good at the time for moving on from Corey Davis.
But they gave Julio Jones was a big swing at the wide receiver position.
They have made these moves at wide receiver. They have tried to do the things that indicate not just, all right, bargain basement hunting, but Julio Jones, who's a future Hall of Famer at the position, A.J. Brown, who is a top 5, should we say, player at his position right now, and then they traded him away. And Corey Davis, they didn't want to draft him at 5. They couldn't trade the pick. They drafted him anyway. And it's not Corey's fault that he was drafted 5th overall. Them's the breaks. But so I don't think that JC is accurate in his assessment of their strategy, because there's evidence, obviously, to the contrary. Now, that evidence is under a previous administration. The only evidence I have of what Ray Carthon thinks of wide receivers is that, waving high at you on a camera while he takes a 5th-round tight end and drafts a wide receiver in the 7th who might be good. I don't know.
Clearly, in their eyes, there just wasn't that much value in those spots at the receiver position in this draft. I would believe that more than I would believe they just don't think wide receiver is important.
Yeah, well, and that was the discussion around the wide receivers. There's no clear and obvious player, but you just at anybody better than the backup running back and another tight end. You don't value anybody above those guys at all.
Like, I guess
it's hard for me to buy that
when they look at who's on the board when Josh Wiley is drafted. I know there's a lot more. There are more receivers on the board in the
Tyler
third round.
Scott was still on the board. He lasted a lot longer than I thought a lot of people would. The Princeton wide receiver who balled out at the Senior Bowl.
A.T. Perry still on the board.
A.T. Perry was still on the board.
Trey Palmer, I believe, out of Nebraska, the speedy receiver. So clearly, all of those guys, they believe Josh Wiley can have a bigger impact for this football team than any of those other guys we just listed.
Sure, because they run 12 and 13 personnel as much as anybody in the league. So why not take the tight end? I'm saying, is that not, is the justification? Yeah, we play this way, so it makes the most sense for us. Well, I'm sitting here banging my head on the table being like, why are you still playing this way? It's 2023. That's all I'm saying. Rock in Maryland up next. What's happening, Rock?
What's going on, Buck? Hey, I just want to say, give everyone a quick history lesson about the Tennessee Titans. Here's a team that hasn't had a franchise quarterback since the late, great Steve McNair. Okay, and not in any order, here's some other quarterbacks from Billy Volek. We've had Kerry Collins, Matt Hasselbeck. We've had, Zach Mettenberger, Rusty Smith, Mariota, all the way to Tannenhill, Malik Willis, and Josh Dobbs off the practice squad. Okay, so I'm tired of all these crybaby Miss Cleos out here who are so sure that Will Levis can't succeed in the NFL. When you're the Tennessee Titans, you got to go keep picking quarterbacks until you find that guy. I think we all, should understand that. And with the whole Skaronski thing, here's a team that loses Taylor Lewan, loses Ben Jones, loses Nate Davis, okay? You need to get some type of protection for, your next hopeful franchise quarterback you bring in here. And as far as the whole, wide receiver situation goes, A.J. Brown, that was one thing. But here's a team last year. I don't know if you guys recall. I believe we were 7-3 at one point. We lost our last 7 in a row without Tannenhill, without a competent quarterback, and this team's a lot better than people really give us credit for. And
Thanks for the call, Rock. 60 seconds on the clock for the call so we can get to everybody or get to as many people as possible. But here he's doing a Chris Collinsworth. Now here's a team. Here's a guy. I get his point. You're not a franchise that can afford to not swing on quarterbacks here. And you can debate the merits of is Ryan Tannehill a franchise quarterback. I don't really want to do that today. That doesn't seem like an engaging or intellectually stimulating discussion. Their draft is functional. I say it again. Their draft does not give you the warm and fuzzies. It is not a departure from who they have historically been. It is very, very much a Tennessee Titans under Mike Vrabel draft. And I think a lot of you had expectations of something different because the general manager changed and you got back this. And maybe you're not happy with that. I can't tell you anything to make you feel any better. I told you how I would feel. If I was a Titans fan with any kind of expectation of exceeding what the product they put out on the field, I told you to start the show, I would be sick to my stomach. But that doesn't mean that I'm right. That doesn't mean that these are bad players. It doesn't mean that their careers are over before they've begun. It doesn't mean that your world is ending, and it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to finish fourth in the AFC South just because Indy and Houston also took quarterbacks in the first round and you waited until the second to do so. There are reasons to question what they did. Those questions have been asked. Whether you're satisfied with the answer or not, I can't provide that for you. But they are going to be accountable for what it is that they just put together. If there are not tangible improvements in 2023, they cannot be the only NFL team that doesn't score 30 points. They cannot lead the league in 3 and outs. They cannot be top 5 in sacks allowed. They cannot be utterly inept on the offensive side of the ball, and they cannot have a situation where the biggest excuse that we have for them, again, at the end of another season is, they just didn't have the players out on the field because they fell apart again. And that's compounded with things like the injury history for Tajay Spears and an organization in the last couple that has been very, very unlucky where health is concerned. These are all the reasons why the biggest issues that people take with their decisions in the draft. There's no right or wrong answer right now, but it is fair to ask questions. Barry in Brentwood is next. Hey, Barry.
Hey, what's up, Buck? Hey, listen, I'm going to see what you think on this. I love the Levis pick. Not that I think he's going to be this great franchise quarterback, but unfortunately, we're in the quarterback market, and I expect Rand the next 3 years or now to try to find us that quarterback. And if you think about it, the only way we're going to get who we want is to suck bad enough we're picking 1 and 2. I don't know if I see a scenario that happens. Maybe it does. And so, and if it doesn't, we're going to have to draft up like Carolina and every other team that has to do every year and give up future first and second round picks. So to me, this is a great risk. And I know you talked about giving up capital the third pick. Third round picks are great. But if we didn't do this next year or the year after, I think we'd have had to been giving up 4 to 5 future picks to try to go up and take a chance on somebody else. Maybe that chance is greater with somebody else, but I feel if it hits, it keeps us from having to do that, and it's a home run for the Titans. That's my thought on that. Just want to see what you guys think about that.
Barry, it's completely rational logic. Like I said, I think I read you guys. I told you guys I was texting some people after the Levis pick was made, and basically just to kind of read that back for you again. I asked, why shouldn't I hate trading up for Will Levis? And the explanation that was provided to me is didn't really give up much for a high-ceiling player at a premium position. That is the way that the middle class in the NFL has to exist, right? Are we considering the Titans the middle class of the NFL? That's probably a fair assessment at this stage, where you look around at what the rest of the AFC in particular, not even their division, but what the rest of the AFC looks like. If you're not bad enough to pick at the top of the draft and get the franchise-changing quarterback, or if you're not close enough to the top of the draft to trade up to number 1 the way that Carolina did, then is Barry's theory or logic to that approach, and potentially the Titans' theory and logic by that approach, is to find a way to make it work, to take risks that are worth taking to an extent. Now, they tried to trade back up into the first, is the reporting, and they ultimately got Will Levis by trading back up in the second. Like I said, it's closer to the flyer that they took on Malik than it is to finding their franchise quarterback. Where these things end up, how these things end up being determined, it's like Mike Vrabel said. Ryan will be the starter. Malik will be the backup. Will be the 3 until such time as they determine otherwise. It's incumbent upon him to do something more than Malik Willis did. It's incumbent upon Malik Willis to make them look like fools, frankly, for taking a quarterback that high. They're hedging their bets against themselves at the most important position, even as you're looking around at the roster and saying, but can't you do more for this team right now? Sue Ann. We've waited too long. Sue Ann is up next. Hello.
Hey, Buck. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course, always.
Well, I mean, it was one of those shake my head weekends, right? And I was looking for some collaboration, and I'm not sure that we saw it on the front end. I'm guessing it was on the back end. And Rand did say that his job was to go get the players that Vrabel wants. And Vrabel does what Vrabel does and picked stray cats. One of them doesn't have a kneecap, but, maybe he's going to be great. And my problem, which I don't have a problem, but my thoughts about Levis is that he needs to be developed. Whatever his instincts are as a quarterback, he still needs to be developed. And we have not seen the coaching staff develop a quarterback since Steve McNair. And I'm concerned about that a little bit. And we just have to kind of wait and see. And Vrabel has proved that nobody in all of the NFL is better at picking and developing stray cats than him. And Tannehill He said, I'm not his coach. He going to say that to Levis? I don't know. But he said it about Malik, and I'm hoping that Tannehill, who I actually am a Tannehill fan, and I hope that he comes to the place where he can decide that, you know what, I'm not going to be this franchise quarterback forever. Let me do what is the right thing for me to do, which is to help these guys that are come after me. So I'll hang up and listen.
It's always lovely to hear from Sue Ann. Rabel does lead the league in developing the stray cats at this point. I would think I had somebody text me about Mike, and surely he recognizes that this is a problem the way that that anybody with eyes feels like it is. And he said the thing on, in fact, do you have the line about, is that enough at wide receiver that we played at the start of the show? I want you to hear from Mike Vrabel specifically about the wide receiver position and what he goes on to say about trusting them as a coaching staff.
Going into Monday, it will be. Yeah, and we're going to continue to explore and find ways to improve our roster and make it as competitive as possible. So on Monday, it will be. We felt good if, for us to add a receiver, we would have come far off our board at those certain levels, and that's what I'm happy about. You guys are going to trust us. We're going to put players in here that are going to help us win.
You guys are going to trust us that we're going to put players in here to help us win. Do you trust them right now? That's a tough question to answer.
Do you trust this coaching staff? Because that's who you look to now. Like Sue Ann was talking about. Charles London just became one of the most important people in that building.
That's right. As did Tim Kelly.
New quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator, as did Tim Kelly. But I really look at Charles London, who will be working with Will Levis probably more than any other coach in that building. And they brought him in this offseason. They made a change at quarterbacks coach to move Pat O'Hara to an analyst role and bring in Charles London from Atlanta. Potentially with the thought in mind of a new rookie quarterback will be in this building after the NFL draft. So how pointed of a move was that from Mike Vrabel when you look at it in hindsight a few weeks ago?
Time will tell. It doesn't matter who the head coach has been. They do not historically develop quarterbacks well here, though there have been some extenuating circumstances. Let's see. Matty Ice says, Lucas, let Sue Ann talk for 5 minutes, but cut off the guy you asked a follow-up question to. Yeah, we play favorites.
Yeah, we play favorites. Sue Ann is a favorite.
Listen, we're never going to lie to you. We play favorites. So be better, and you'll get more time. That's how these things work. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. Don't worry if you can't get in with us. Blaine and Mickey, 3HL, on after that. We'll be continuing to react to this Titans draft class. We will do that and update the polls coming up next. Wrapping it up here on this Monday. Been a fun show. We've been talking all about this draft class, but listen, you guys know I think I'm smarter than I actually am. I think that's a fair assessment. Lucas, do you disagree?
No, but we all do.
Well, if my analysis of the Titans draft class is not enough for you, then let me provide you with somebody who is far smarter about the sport of football than any of us could ever hope to be. Greg Cosell is flying in from Philadelphia, from NFL Films headquarters, just to break down this Titans draft class with you guys at the Analog in the Hutton Hotel. May the 20th is when the live taping of the Install podcast is going to go down. Tickets are available right now for just $25 at 1045thezone.com. It's going to be a banger. We're going to have a lot of fun. I haven't forced Lucas or Bert to attend. By the way, are we getting Bert back from whatever assignment he's been on where he's DMing us in the middle of the night videos of him on a toilet somewhere? It was disconcerting.
He'll come stumbling in here midway through hour 2 tomorrow.
We need to talk to him. His flight got canceled. He's been stuck in New Jersey, which delights me. Imagine Bert in New Jersey.
Yeah, it doesn't. Two things that don't mesh.
It's like the Beverly Hills Hillbillies type of situation. Like Bert in New Jersey doesn't seem like it'd be a good mix. Although attitude-wise, I think they're probably on par.
New Jersey, just not a great place to be stuck in, it would seem. To me, as someone that has never been to New Jersey.
Last call for phone calls. I used to live in New Jersey for a little while. Not terrible. Larissa up next. What's happening?
Hello, gentlemen. Love this station. All the shows are fantastic.
Thanks.
I just want to say, Titan fans, relax. Give these guys a break. All the armchair quarterbacks, et cetera, so full of doom and gloom. Since you know so much, and those negative folks, maybe try to be a walk-on. Get a contract. This team is rebuilding. And based on the draft, again, it's rebuilding. And when this team gets to the Super Bowl, every single one of the little negative callers that are so upset that Will Levis and yada, 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 get in line to take a sip out of their dirty sneakers or something. Be quiet. Relax. It is not that serious. Have some fun with it. I'm going to be quiet and listen.
It's lovely to have you, Larissa. You're welcome back anytime. Oh, goodness. She's got him doing shoeies. That is one phenomenon I've never understood. Why people chug things out of shoes now. Like, what is the purpose? Who are you doing that for? That can't be good for you. That can't taste good. Anyway. David in Nashville will be our last call of the day. And, of course, Blaine and Mickey 3HL on after that will continue to react to the Titans draft. Go ahead, David.
Hey, hope you guys are good. Hey, I wanted to comment that last caller. Would you rather build with bricks or sticks? But my point is this. Put your crystal ball out and just lay out who do you think will be the top 5 quarterbacks after this end of this 2023-24 season based on where they were drafted. Who do you think will be the top 5 statistically and contributed most to their team?
Oh, I think you'd have to put Bryce Young at the top for obvious reasons, just opportunity. Stroud, I think, is going to be in the same discussion. Did you see Jim Irsay wants to start Anthony Richardson?
I saw that report. Yeah, because I was going to say Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are the only two shoe-in starting day one guys. You would think, right? Yeah. Andy Dalton's on the roster in Carolina, but they're probably going to trot out their number 1 pick.
I honestly like Houston's setup with Stroud a little better than I do Carolina right now with Bryce Young. I would probably favor Stroud over Young just in terms of if you ask me at the end of the year who performed the best statistically. Houston did a lot with their skill position players. So I'd probably go Stroud, Young, Richardson, Hooker, Levis.
Yeah,
just because I think Hooker,
Levis and Hooker are at the bottom because they're not starting.
Right.
They're not starting week 1.
Goff and Tannehill are going to be here. If it happens in the middle of the season, it's because something bad has happened to Tannehill or Goff. So I think, you're really just doing it with the 3 of them. And so I think it's pretty easy to go Stroud, Young, Richardson, rather. Polls, please.
Oh, I wasn't ready.
Oh.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Because the polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's time for a poll update, and he's a good boy. Buck Rising show producer and correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. What does the 2023 draft class tell you about the direction of the Titans franchise? Anthony says, trying to fix a broken offense through the draft. Chip says, it tells me they didn't learn from drafting Malik Willis. I'd argue quite the opposite. Means they didn't like what they learned from drafting Malik Willis. So they took a polar opposite prospect in a lot of ways.
They're all set on the Malik Willis situation. If Malik Willis proves them wrong and makes them look foolish, it's not necessarily a good thing because then you don't know what to do with Levis.
Chet says he learned that the Titans are prioritizing the offensive line and running the football.
Yep. Turns out, same offense.
What is your favorite Titans draft pick? Jared says Peter Skaronski, the best pick.
It's true. That is the thing that fits them the most. It helps the most amount of things where they had issues, and it's a premium player that fell to them later than it, I legitimately do take them at their word that Skaronski fell later than they expected.
Private on Twitter says Will Levis thinks it was a steal to get him at 33.
Now, wait, does Private have a follow-up? Because I believe I'm familiar with the Private.
Private Dip Bleep is the name of the Twitter handle.
Were you scared?
No. Okay. I'll be okay.
Go ahead.
What is your least favorite Titans draft pick? Karen says Levis. Everybody says Levis.
Yeah. It's the one thing. We found one thing societally. You can't agree on politicians. You can't agree on legislation. You can't agree on anything in your life except that none of the Titans fans wanted them to draft Will Levis.
Which NFL team had the best draft? Mahogany says the Texans. Jordan's going with the Eagles. Eric likes the Lions.
We'll dip into that conversation tomorrow. I think there's a bunch of good nominees, both in the NFC and the AFC. Hell, I like a couple of teams in the AFC South's draft, as a matter of fact.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. It was fun. If you missed any of it, it's available via podcast. Check out all 3 hours wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back at it tomorrow to talk about the rest of the NFL, specifically the AFC South and the quarterback changes that they made. In the meantime, Blaine and Mickey will keep you entertained. See you guys.